Okay, so welcome to our second virtual session for middle schools during the 22-23 school year. Today, we're going to talk about customizing your Classlink. The things that we're going to talk about today are going to be things that both staff and students can do to make better use of their Classlink page. So, if that's your access point or your entry point into all the various applications that you use, you really need Classlink to work the best way it possibly can for you. And that's what today's session is going to be all about, is making ClassLink work the best it possibly can for you and again for your students. One quick note to talk about for ClassLink. If it is on your ClassLink page, and again, this is for staff and students, it is approved for use. So we in the Office of Instructional Technology field a lot of questions from teachers about looking for approved applications. And I just want you to know that if it's on ClassLink, it's definitely gone through the MOI process. It is definitely approved for staff and students to use. If it is not on ClassLink, that does not mean it is or is not approved, but you can definitely know if you find an application on ClassLink, it is approved for use. And with that, let's go ahead and get into our agenda of what we're actually going to do and learn about ClassLink today. So first off, we're going to talk about how to customize the layout of the apps. I want you to think of your ClassLink dashboard as functioning just like your mobile phone or a tablet might. And we're going to see that as we get into customizing where your apps are and how your ClassLink dashboard appears to you. Then we're going to look at how to create folders. We're going to add new apps to your ClassLink dashboard. We're going to talk about utilizing your favorites area. We're going to look at all the options. That's what you can do when you right click on your ClassLink dashboard. We're going to look at the settings and profile options that you have. We're going to get into some of those analytics for you and your students. And lastly, of course, super important is how to search. If you're like me, if you ever get hyper organized, you might need to utilize that search feature to figure out where you put something if you can't remember exactly where it is. And with that, let's go ahead and jump out of the presentation and start working through those items on our agenda. So here we are on my ClassLink dashboard, and it's not going to look exactly like yours. My apps might be in a slightly different position. My background might be different, but the basic idea is the same. Your ClassLink dashboard is your access point to all the online applications that we use across AACPS. Each one of these buttons or apps, as ClassLink calls them, is access into that application. But the other thing that's really great about ClassLink is this is what's called a single sign-on service. And that means when you access something like Brightspace or your Google applications or Wixie, any of these things that have a login, when you access that through ClassLink, it will capture your login credentials, and the next time you log in, it logs you in faster. This is especially important when we consider all of the online textbooks that we have across various content areas and grade levels at this point, because a lot of those textbook providers have their own rules for creating usernames and passwords for their users to log in. And that means not all of our staff and students are logging in with their standard AACPS username and password. So having a single sign-on service like ClassLink means that students and staff members can get into those applications faster without having to remember a variety of different usernames and passwords, keep them all straight, and keep putting them in every single day in order to get into those applications. So not only does it give us one place in order to access all of our applications, but it logs you into those applications even faster. So, the first thing that we're going to talk about today, as our agenda revealed, is customizing the layout of your apps here. Now, by default, your apps will be in alphabetical order. And that means starting over here in the upper left hand corner, you should find things like AACPS Brightspace and AACPS Homepage, because alphabetically those are going to be first. As you get down towards the very end of your class link, that's where you'd find things like, say, possibly YouTube and Typing Club, Video, things that alphabetically are last. But you can change the order of these simply by selecting on an app, dragging it someplace else, and letting go. Again, very much like using a mobile phone or a tablet. If you grab a hold of an application and you drag it on top of another application and you pause there for a moment, you're going to see that it sort of expands out. And now you are creating a folder where you can drop those applications. So that is one way that you can create a folder. We'll see another way to create a folder in a few minutes. But you can organize the layout of your class link so that you have the applications that you use the most at the top or here in the middle, wherever it's going to be most meaningful for you. You can even group similar things together. So the applications that you tend to use every single day can be in the upper left, the ones that you only use on B days on the upper right, whatever organization is meaningful for you. And I do know a lot of people who actually like to keep them in alphabetical order. So if you like that, you don't have to change the order of anything at all. Let's get back to talking about folders. You all just saw me create a folder by dragging an app on top of another app. The other way to create a folder is to simply right click here on ClassLink and then choose Add Folder. One of the benefits to going this route is that when I go to add the folder, I get to give it a name. When I just dragged that Brain Pop Junior on top of Brain Pop to create a folder, it's now just given it this generic name, New Folder. I can go back and rename that, but if I right click and go to create the folder, I have the ability to make the folder name right here. Once I've typed in that name, selected a color for my folder, I would have the ability to click my create button. Let's go back to that folder that I created just a moment ago, and I'm going to right click on this one and choose edit folder. And that's going to give me that option again to add a name there or change the name. And of course, even customize the color of the folder as we saw just a moment ago. Click save, and I now have my folder identified correctly. You cannot put a folder in a folder. So when you see this icon here or this shape that indicates that this is a folder, I cannot drag a folder into a folder. And in fact, if I even try to, you'll see that little lock comes up in the background there letting me know, no, 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 you can't do that. You're trying to do something that isn't allowed there. So you can put apps into folders. You cannot put folders into folders. One of the number one things that we recommend that you and your students do is create a folder with a name, something along the lines of stuff I don't use. You can, of course, call it whatever would be meaningful to you. But one of the things that we're going to talk about as we get into looking at ClassLink today is that you and your students cannot delete applications that are pushed out by our ClassLink administrators. And what that means is you have a lot of things on ClassLink that you don't need. If you don't teach social studies, that social studies textbook is not useful to you. If you don't teach science, that science textbook is not useful to you. So I recommend that you create a folder, give it a title, something along the lines of stuff I don't use, and then drag all of those apps that you don't need into that particular folder to kind of clean up your ClassLink dashboard. Get rid of the things that aren't going to be meaningful to you. Again, keeping in mind that you cannot put a folder in a folder. I also, if you haven't noticed, do not keep my class link in alphabetical order. I prefer to have a custom order to my apps there. And what that means is that I tend to keep the apps that I use the most up here at the top. And then the apps that I use infrequently, I let those fall to the bottom down here, in addition to organizing them into that folder called Stuff I Don't Use. And as you saw a moment ago, adding an app to a folder is simply dragging it onto that folder, pausing for a moment until the folder grows large or the application grows small before releasing it. You'll also notice that the folders that have been pushed out for you from the district, like this secure your account one that has the password change information, the self-service information, and this virtual desktop one, do not allow you to add additional apps. So if I try and add an app to one of these two folders, I see that same lockbox that indicates to me, nope, this folder is locked down. You cannot customize or make any changes to this one at all. Now let's transition over and talk about adding new applications. What if there are certain things that you like to use daily that are not currently on your ClassLink dashboard? Can you add them? The answer is yes. If you come up to the launch pad here in the upper left hand corner, you'll notice right next to it there's a little plus sign icon here. This plus sign is going to open the app library. For staff members, when you open the app library, you have a couple of tabs here across the top. You have a tab called All Apps that gives you access to every single app that ClassLink has ever allowed for any of their subscribers or users anywhere. Every app they have. Seriously, all of them. Doesn't mean they're going to have every application, period. It's every application that ClassLink has ever created a button or an app for their users. The second tab that we have here is the AACPS library. These are applications that we have specifically added to an area that is easier for staff to get to, but also approved for students. Now, this is a really big distinction between what staff and students see. When students open that app library, they do not see the All Apps tab at all. They only see the AACPS library tab because these are applications that we have approved and allowed students to put on their own ClassLink dashboard. So you'll see things like the Anne Arundel County Public Library, Code Studio, some of the college entrance examination apps, and things like that. These are approved for students to use, and they can add these to their own class link. What you'll notice here is that any applications that have been added have a remove button, meaning I can take them off of ClassLink, and any of the ones that I have not added before simply have the add button. To add any one of these, I'll just take National Geographic as an example. You would simply click on add, and now that button changes from add to remove because it has been added to my ClassLink dashboard. If I close out of the app library, which is done simply by clicking the X here in the upper right hand corner, you'll now see that National Geographic has been added to my ClassLink dashboard. It's down here at the bottom. Every time you add a new application, it's going to go to the very bottom of the list of the apps that you currently have, and you can move it as we saw before simply by dragging it to a different position, letting go, or dragging it on top of another application if you intend to make a folder for that application to live in. Any of these apps that you add yourself, you can also remove them. So that National Geographic that I added previously, if I right click on it, you'll see one of the options that I have here is remove apps. So if I don't want the application anymore, if I'm not going to use it, I can simply right click on it and choose remove app. But as we said a moment ago, the applications that are pushed out to you by the district cannot be removed. So if I click on something like Lumio by Smart, I do not see that remove app option because this one is pushed out from the district. So if I am not a person who's going to use Lumio at any time and I want it off of my ClassLink dashboard, remove is not an option. So I might prefer to take it and drag it over and put it into that stuff I don't use folder. It'll always be on my ClassLink, but it's no longer taking up valuable real estate in the space that I have for the apps that I'm going to use. Another option that you have with organizing your class link is this area across the bottom here that's known as favorites. Right now, what you probably see on your toolbar across the bottom are just these three blue buttons, and you may not see all of them depending on whether or not you have classes set up for you in ClassLink. The first one here is My Classes. The icon looks like a little backpack. The second one is My Files. That's that little folder there. And then the third one is My Analytics, and it shows that little person in front of a graph or a chart there. But you can add additional applications to sort of this quick access or favorites area down here across the bottom. It's usually a good idea to think of this as maybe a top five. If you favorite everything, it's not faster to get to them at this point. But if you take maybe, say, the top 5 applications that you use every single day and you favorite them or add them to this quick access toolbar, it is a quicker way to get to them instead of scanning through all the apps and trying to find that icon, especially when we consider that so many of the icons on ClassLink are blue. I don't know what it is about education companies. They all like the color blue. So, in order to favorite something, once again, we're coming right back to that right click there. When you choose that right click, one of your options here is add to favorites. If you choose add to favorites, that app now appears down here on that quick launch or favorites toolbar across the bottom. And again, I recommend this as being sort of a top 5. So at this point, mine's probably gotten a little bit crowded because I'm up to like 8 different applications here. So I'd probably suggest removing a couple of those. When you favorite something, it puts a little star on it up here in your ClassLink dashboard to kind of remind you that, hey, not only can you get to this from here, but you can also get to it from down there on your favorites bar. And then, of course, at any time, you can right click on something and choose remove from favorites. It doesn't take it off of your ClassLink dashboard, it just takes it off of that quick access area down there at the bottom. I know this is a place that's underutilized by a lot of our staff and students. So I highly recommend getting into utilizing your favorites. And again, think of it as just like a top 5. Maybe pick 5 applications that you use every single day and favorite those. So maybe things like your Google Drive, your Brightspace, if you're using that a lot. If you're a big fan of Nearpod, I might recommend favoriting that one. If you're constantly going to some of our websites like Teacher Intro to Digital Tools, my media folks would love to favorite something like Mac and Via. Favorites work for students too. So if you have an application that you use every single day in class and you feel like you're wasting instructional time, having students find that application every day, have them favorite it. They can put it down there on the bottom, but keep in mind that they're favoriting across all of their classes. So if you have them favorite 3 apps and their language arts teacher has them favorite 3, you can see how that quick access or favorites bar can start to get very full for them very quickly. Moving on to the next item on our agenda that we're going to talk about today, that is everything else in the right click. We've already seen a handful of options in your right click, options like creating a new folder, or if you're clicking into a folder, things like renaming it, changing the color of it. But there's lots of options in your right click that I want to go over. And I want to talk about the options when you right click on an application, when you right click on a folder, and when you just right click on the dashboard, period. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to right click on one of my applications here. Starting from the top of our right click and just moving down, the first option is launch. Well, if my intention is to launch it, why don't I just click on it? Right click isn't any more efficient than that. The second option there is to set it to auto launch. Similar to your favorites, if you use this application every single day, you can have it auto launch when you launch ClassLink at the start of the day. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close my ClassLink here for just a moment, and then I'm going to reopen or relaunch my ClassLink here. Give me a second. I've got to fool it into letting me open another one because I still have it open where I'm recording. So let's go back to ClassLink. And I have one application set to auto launch. So you're going to notice that once I get signed into ClassLink, and of course it doesn't work. That's always fun. I have Google Drive set to auto launch. So you can see here when I right click on it that it says remove auto launch. And it probably didn't work because I still have the Google Meet tab open. So I was trying to kind of fool it into launching that. But what I'm saying is every single time I launch ClassLink, I want it to launch Google Drive because there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to go into some application in my Google Drive. I'm going to open a document, I'm going to open slides. I work in my Google Files every single day. So every time it launches ClassLink, the second tab that opens is my Google Drive. And that way I can quickly jump in and open whatever file I want to work with today. So auto launch, like your favorites, I wouldn't have it auto launch more than about 3, maybe 5 at the most, but 3 is usually a good number of applications that you yourself tend to use every single day. You can set those to auto launch so that every single time you open ClassLink, it will open that other application as well. Because I already have this one favorited, you can see that it also has remove favorite. I do have the ability to add it to a folder if I don't want to use that drag and drop, but as we've already seen, I can add it to a folder by dragging it. If I choose the right click option, you'll see here when I hover over add to folder, it gives me the ability to create a new one, but it also shows me the 2 folders that I have permission to add things to. And remember those other folders, things like the iReady folder and the Microsoft Virtual Desktop, I don't have the ability to edit those. Those are folders that are given to me by admin. So these are the 2 that I could add this to. App tags are a way to search. They're honestly not something that we use a whole lot of in AACPS, but I could tag certain applications as instructional materials. I could tag them with online textbooks, whatever is meaningful to me. And then that gives me more options for when I'm searching the applications on my desktop. And we're going to talk more about search in a little bit. So tags are an option. We just don't tend to utilize them very much. Edit password is really only something that you're going to use for very specific applications in which you yourself change your password. So for this one, I'm actually going to switch over here to Nearpod and let's talk a little bit about Nearpod. If you are a Nearpod user, you know that you had to set up your own Nearpod account in AACPS. Accounts were not created for you and your Nearpod account does not sync with your AACPS account, meaning when you change your password in AACPS, it doesn't change your Nearpod password for you. Your Nearpod password is whatever you set up when you created your Nearpod account. So if you were to ever get an email from Nearpod that says, uh-oh, our accounts have been hacked, we highly recommend you change your password immediately, and you go into Nearpod and change that password, you need to come here to Classlink and change what Classlink has stored in its single sign-on database, or every time you try to log into Nearpod in the future, it's going to say your password's wrong because Classlink is remembering your old password. So in the case of applications like Nearpod, you may occasionally, not very often, but occasionally you may need to change your password. And that is only for those applications where you're utilizing an outside or external password. Things like your Wixie account, your Google Drive, your OneDrive, your Smart, your Discovery Education. I'm just looking over my class link here and choosing some things. All of those are utilizing your AACPS password. When you update your AACPS password, it will update what ClassLink knows about that password as well. It's only for applications like Nearpod where you set up your own account. And if you choose to change your Nearpod password, you will need to come here and change what ClassLink has for your Nearpod password by choosing Edit Password. And then you'll go into the default here by clicking on your little edit pencil and changing that to something else. Okay. I'm not going to do that right now because I don't want to change my Nearpod password, but you will need to change that to whatever you changed it to on Nearpod if there comes a time where you change your password in an application like Nearpod. Back to our right click options here. Reporting an issue. This is a great way to give feedback to ClassLink. When you click on that, you can tell them something about this particular application, how it's not launching correctly. Keep in mind, this is not sending report issues to, say, WeVideo. It's sending it to ClassLink there. More information we can skip past. You can sort your applications as we saw. By default, it's going to be by name or alphabetically. I prefer to manually drag mine into the order that I prefer. We saw the add app option from up here next to Launchpad there to open the app library. This add app is just another way to do that. And then we saw add folder. And let's talk a little bit about changing the background or customizing your ClassLink appearance here. So if you come up to the second icon next to the plus sign, next to the add or open app library there, you'll see you have a little pencil sitting on what looks like a piece of paper. That'll take you into edit mode or allow you to customize your ClassLink dashboard itself. So I'm going to go ahead and select on that. And then you get a toolbar that drops down underneath of that launch pad there. You again have the add folder, lots of purposeful redundancy, lots of different ways to accomplish the same thing there. But then we also have options here towards the right hand side. First off, we can customize the theme. We have what's called classic, primary, and professional. Let's go ahead and look at each of those. If I choose on classic, you'll see that's what I have. Primary is going to take me to something that would be user friendly for our early elementary students. All of my apps get really big. The background gets simplified. We take away a lot of the, I'll call it visual noise. And this would be very helpful for our youngest learners because it simplifies their ClassLink dashboard significantly. And then lastly, we have professional, which is also sort of streamlined. We take away that visual, bright, colorful, or graphic background there. We have just a color, in this case, a white background there, but our applications get a little bit smaller. So not quite as user friendly for our primary students there, but that's all just under theme. I'm going to go back to my classic that I prefer. Moving again along our customize toolbar over here, we can change the size of our apps. Small, the default or medium size there, and then large. I actually have a tendency to change the size of my applications depending on the computer that I'm using. So my desktop at Carver has some pretty large monitors, and therefore the applications or these buttons show up pretty well for me in the default there. But when I'm on my laptop screen is a lot smaller. And since I don't want to have to scroll to see this bottom row of apps there, what I tend to do when I'm viewing from my laptop, sorry, I was over here on app size, is I tend to change them to small because that allows all of the applications to show up on my laptop screen without me needing to scroll at all in order to see those. So feel free to customize the size of your apps based on the screen that you're working on. Or if you use your laptop every single day and you're like me and you don't want to have to scroll to see them, you might prefer to change them to something like small. Again, if you're working with younger learners, students who have trouble finding the applications, encourage them to change their apps to the larger size there. On this screen, I do prefer the default because, again, I can see all of the apps. They're a reasonable size and so on. Font style simply allows you to change how the names of the application show up. You can have the text background one, or you can have the text shadow, which removes the block but gives you a little bit of a shadow to help you see the white text over top of different colored backgrounds there. I prefer the text background for reading those. Continuing to move across, we have the palette here. What the palette largely changes is just the color of the launchpad bar that you see across the top. Right now, I have mine set to sort of a darker gray here, but we can choose between the blue. There's a sort of a greenish yellow here. Really, all I'm changing with palette is the color of that launchpad bar across the top, and then these two buttons down here in the lower right-hand corner as well. And then our last option there is to customize the wallpaper itself or what appears behind your apps. And again, this is only if you're in the classic theme. If you're in the either simplified, the primary, I believe was what they called it, or the professional, you won't have the option to change your background wallpaper. But in the classic theme, you do. We can only choose from the wallpaper that Classlink has available for us, which is a good thing. We don't want to get too distracted with lots of different images there, but you can choose whatever image you'd like to add behind your applications. And it's as simple as choosing that from custom wallpaper, choosing that theme or that color across the top there for your palette as well. And then one of the things you'll notice that'll come by occasionally, depending on the season, is this little icon that appears in the lower left-hand corner, which will bring up something on your class link. So by clicking on my little scarecrow there, I've now changed my wallpaper to the pumpkin patch. We've got a little tractor that's slowly rolling by with like a hay ride there, and what appears to be, I think those are leaves falling in the background. I thought for a moment they were acorns. That would be weird. Little leaves falling in the background. So you'll notice as the season changes that there'll be a little snowman that'll appear down there. There'll be fireworks that'll come up around January 1st, and hearts at Valentine's Day, all kinds of cute little things there just to, engage and inspire teachers and students if you choose to click on those. You can also remove that by clicking on, in this case, the little scarecrow again, and that'll remove that pumpkin patch background that I added there. The other option that you have from across the top here, on your Launchpad, is over here on the right-hand side, you have your profile icon. Let's go ahead and click on our profile and look at our settings there. So if you click the little drop down next to your profile here, it'll pop out and you'll have the ability to sign out of ClassLink, but more importantly, you'll see this settings option here. So when you click on settings, it allows you to see your basic or general information here, your name, your email address, what time format you have set. You can see the themes and change those as well. So again, multiple ways to do the same thing. If you want to change your theme, app size, font, palette, wallpaper, you can do all of that from here inside of the profile settings as well. You can also access your password locker again and change the passwords for any of those applications that you need to. Again, keeping in mind that most of these are set for you. Whatever AACPS has for your credentials is what ClassLink has. So you're not going to want to change most of those. But if they're applications that you yourself sign up for, Kahoot is another great example. You can set your password for that and then reset it at any point if you need to. Auto launch, we talked a little bit about that. The only thing I have set to auto launch right now is Google Drive. That means every time ClassLink launches, my Google Drive launches in a second tab. It just makes it quicker for me to get into that application and get started using anything in there. So you can turn on auto launch for any of your apps that you might like to. Again, I usually tell people keep it under about 3. You don't want everything auto launching. It defeats the purpose of ClassLink. Sign in options. Everyone's Microsoft account is linked with their ClassLink. So the first time that you go to ClassLink, you probably have to sign in with Microsoft. If you have set it up or synced it to your Google account, it will sign you in with Google. And you can see here, because the icon that I have is to disconnect both of my accounts, I have both of them connected. But when you first launch ClassLink, you'll notice 2 buttons. One of them is sign in with Google, the other is sign in with Microsoft. If the sign in with Google doesn't work for you, it's because you haven't connected your Google account yet. If you go into your profile, sign in options, and then let it connect your Google account, you will be able to use the sign in with Google button every time in the future. Our last tab here for our profile is our security. And this tells you when was the last time you logged in, where did you log in, basic information like that. So if you feel like your account might have been hacked, security might be a place for you to investigate a little bit of that. But honestly, I wouldn't know my IP address whether it was right or not. So security is probably something more helpful to people who actually work in security than it is for me. But the most valuable thing here under your profile settings is your sign in option right there to connect your Google account. And then again, some of those other options that we saw are redundant to things like right clicking from your applications and so on. The other option that you have from here inside of your profile is to change your profile picture here. Let's go back in there. Okay. Under general here, if you click right on your profile image there, you'll notice that you have the option to choose from lots of different characters that ClassLink has available for us. Staff members only have the ability to upload their own picture. So you noticed that the picture that I have for me is actually a picture of me. It's not an avatar or anything. It's actually a photo of me. It's a pretty old one at this point, but it is a photo of me. Students will only have the ability to choose these profile icons that ClassLink gives them, so they can choose from these. I don't know, there's people here, there's monsters, there's what looks like aliens or robots or something, all kinds of funky characters that they can choose from here. They cannot upload their own, only staff can upload their own profile image there. Okay, let's cancel out of that. And let's come back and let's talk about some analytics here. So there are two different sets of analytics that you might be able to see in ClassLink. And largely it depends on your role in the school system, what you can see. The first is down here at the bottom in the center of your ClassLink next to that favorites area that we talked about previously. And that is the My Analytics. When you choose on My Analytics, it's going to tell you some things about your ClassLink usage. What applications do you use the most? Let's go into App Summary. That's more interesting. So while we're waiting for that to load, this is going to tell me which applications I use the most, how many times I've launched into these. So you can see I use ACPS Brightspace a lot. I use Google Drive a lot. I've also been in Nearpod Teacher a lot lately, Teacher Intro to Digital Tools, and so on. So I can see how many times I've launched them, how long I spend in each of these applications. This is analytics about your use of ClassLink. Which applications are you using the most? How long are you spending in them? And so on. So just some information about you. You can also change the date and timestamp here on in the upper right hand corner if you want to see which applications you used most last year and so on. Let's get out of my analytics. That opened in a new tab, so I'm just going to close that tab. The other one that you may have, if you have classes that are rostered for you in PowerSchool, you will see this backpack icon that says My Classes. And this is the ability for you to check in on analytics for your students here. So you can see that I'm actually teaching some classes this year. And so therefore, I do have some classes set up for me here in ClassLink, and I can look at the analytics for these students. Let's see if we can get that one to load there. Sometimes I find that I have to do it a couple of times. Let's go to the other one and see if I can get this one to load. It's always fun when you're doing a session and you can't get the things you want to load to come up for you. Come on, My Classes, you can do it. All right, I'm going to try this one more time. Let's go back and let's click on the other one. Nothing. There we go. Whew. Okay. Yeah. Told you sometimes I have to click on it a couple of times to get there. So here we can see the students who are in my class on my roster here. And if I click on logins, it will show me when was the last time they accessed the different applications. Let's try activity for that. Let's change my date range and see if we can go to last week and get some information. Okay, so here we can see which applications the students clicked into, how long they spent. So here we have a student who spent an hour in applications. Clicked on from ClassLink on Thursday of last week, another hour, an hour, an hour, so on. If we choose, if we go back to logins for last week, let's see. So this tells me that students accessed applications from ClassLink every single day last week. And if we select into, sorry, I'm trying to get it to actually show me which applications the student clicked into. Here we go. So here we have a student that utilized iReady last week, EverFi, ConnectEd, and PowerSchool Student Portal last week as the different applications that they went into. So this is an opportunity for you to see what your students are using from the ClassLink analytics here. And once more, I'm going to click on the login summary, give that a moment to load for us. And it's just taking me back to the same page again. Okay. I promise there's some good analytics here for what you can see from what your students are using from Classlink. Keep in mind, if you're having them click into applications from, say, Brightspace, like if I'm giving my students a Nearpod lesson and I'm having them click into the lesson from Brightspace, Classlink isn't capturing those analytics. These are only the applications that my students are clicking into from Classlink. So when you think about how valuable these analytics are for you, you need to think about how you're having your students get to the lessons that you are giving to them. If you're having them go into discovery education through your Brightspace lesson, ClassLink isn't going to capture those analytics. So how you're having them get there plays a factor into whether or not those ClassLink analytics are valuable for you. The last thing that we're going to talk about today as we wrap things up here is search. At the top of your class link here, you have the ability to search for any applications that you're looking for on ClassLink. This is, again, particularly important for staff and students that are utilizing folders. If you are organizing applications into folders, sometimes you may find that you inadvertently hide an app from yourself. You just organize it into a folder and then you forget that you put it there. Our students do this to themselves as well. We get lots of phone calls and emails from teachers saying, my student deleted Wixie from their class link. They definitely didn't. They cannot delete applications that are pushed out to them from the district level. So if a student comes to you and says, help, I can't find WeVideo, I think I might have deleted it, they definitely did not delete it. They may have organized it into a folder though. If you click up here into the search and you type in something that you are looking for, it will show you any applications. So in this case, I have an admin access into Wixie. That's this little bright colored hand here. Plus I have the standard Wixie access that everyone has. Because I've done the search here, it's showing me the two places. Wixie, the standard one that everybody has, is here on my ClassLink dashboard. The other one is in the folder called Stuff I Don't Use. So this way I know, oops, I organized it into this folder and I can click into the folder to find it there. If I decide I don't want it in the folder, I can even right click on it and choose Remove from Folder to pull it back out of this folder, put it back on my dashboard. I'm not deleting it. I'm just moving it out of this folder so that I can find it easier in the future next time I need to access it, because apparently putting it into this folder, it's not doing me any favors. It's not helping me find that. So if a student comes to you and says, I can't find the application that I need for class today, I think I might have deleted it, before you assume they deleted it, do the search, show them how to search, and that way you'll be able to figure out whether or not they accidentally organized it into a folder, and that's why they can't find it. Let's come back to our little presentation here and start wrapping up for the day. As we went through the content today, we talked about a handful of things, not a lot, that teachers can do and some things that students can and cannot do. Teachers, staff members, you can do everything we looked at today. You can organize the order of your apps. You can put apps into folders. You can add new apps to your class link from either the app library or the AACPS library. You can delete apps as long as they are apps you yourself added. You cannot delete any applications that the district pushes out for you. So you have all of the organization tools and features that we looked at today. Students. Students can change their profile picture, but they cannot upload their own. They can only choose the avatars or images that ClassLink has available for us to set as profile pictures. Students can search and add apps to ClassLink, but only from the AACPS library. If they want to add applications to ClassLink, it has to be approved. It has to be added to the AACPS library. You can request applications be added to the AACPS library, the same place that you would request assistance from your tech support staff member at your school. You can do that by submitting what's called a remedy ticket. If you guys have questions about that, I can hang around at the end to answer those for you. Students do not have the ability to delete any apps from their ClassLink other than those that they add themselves from the ASCPS library. Again, that's standard for both staff and students. And with that, we are done talking about customizing ClassLink. We do have a recording for this session. If you missed the very beginning, feel free to go back and watch some of those first tips that were shared. And if you missed the entire session, the recording will be posted into the slide deck where all of the virtual sessions are being posted. If you guys have questions after today, you can always email me at tebrown1